Hello, so 3 students. Today we're looking at a few weeds in my backyard. So this one here we have is Crofton weed. It's a member of Asteraceae, the daisy family. And this is its typical habit. It's reaching about 1 meter tall. Usually it's found in moist areas. It really loves growing next to stormwater channels that have a bit more nutrient and a bit more water in them, and very common in sandstone areas. And while this one is looking a little scraggly, they can actually make quite dense thickets if they get enough moisture and enough sunlight. They have a white flower, the terminal, they're on the ends. Being Asteraceae, they produce many seeds. And yeah, it's quite a common one you'll find in the bush. Now, this is Crofton weed and its relative is mistflower, and the difference between the two is leaf shape and size of the plant. The mistflower is a much smaller plant. Usually it's around 30 to 40, 50 centimeters, whereas our Crofton weed is tall. It's about 1.5 meters, this individual. And the leaf on mistflower is also much narrower. Control techniques, I find the best one for this is actually just to hand pull it out if that doesn't mean that it will destroy the creek bank. And you have to raft it because you find that if we rip it out, often it has a lot of soil attached, especially if it's going to be in a moist, clayey, riparian area. This one in my backyard is kind of sandy, so it hasn't attached a lot of soil. So in the bush, I would knock that soil off and then I would raft it, because what you'll find is along the stems, the plant will actually reroot. One important thing to note is as you pull it out, often there's bits of stem or root that'll snap off and reshoot, so you got to check your work there. That's Crofton weed. Next one we have is fishbone fern. Now this one is actually native to northern New South Wales, but it's a big weed around Sydney areas, close to houses, but mainly it comes through from dumpings. The difference between this form and the northern New South Wales form is this one forms these really thick clumps and they just sort of march on. You can see they're marching into my lawn, and they do that through an underground rhizome. The native form in the rainforest is quite sparse and it doesn't outcompete every single other plant around. And here's a view of one I just pulled out earlier. So they have a rhizome that creeps underground and it has these little balls here. You can see them, they're for storage of sugars and water. Now, different to asparagus fern, where we said you don't need to remove the water tubers because they don't have nodes that will reproduce more of the fronds on asparagus fern. On fishbone fern, these actually contain nodes and they creep along. So there would be one of those little storage balls under this guy here in the grass. Now the trick with this one is just to come back for follow-up after you've hit it a few times. My main control technique for this is to hand weed it. And if I found a clump like this in the bush, I would just mow into it, pull out these clumps. They come out fairly easily. Then I raft them in a pile, and I find they just decompose down there okay. Next thing you'll find is that these tubes actually do come off in the ground, and I find that's just part of it. I don't go chasing them with the trowel too much. I find it's actually quicker to just keep ripping them out rather than to chase this through the soil trying to get these little tubers. You end up saving a lot more time. It can be sprayed using glyphosate and metsulfuron. It's quite effective, but again, that's a stronger chemical. We can find on the back that these ones are producing spore. Here we can see there's these little sort of kidney shape or horseshoe shape like sori, and sori is where the fern produces its spores because it doesn't have seeds like a regular flowering plant. And so the key pattern here is that there's these little dots or little kidney-like sori on the back of the leaf. Okay. And we can see where it's attaching to the rachis there, the stemmy part. It's actually a little bit lobed. Okay. Just where my thumb is placed there, we can see that the fern also has a little thumb that's sticking up. Okay. That's fishbone fern. Next, we have trad. So trad is a really common species in the bushland, and it's not my favorite because what can actually happen is a small fragment, say this big, can break off, can be washed down the waterway or thrown over the fence of someone's garden waste. That then spreads 20 years later, takes over the valley, costs like $1 million to get rid of. So very invasive and very prolific. It comes up and it forms these really dense mats. They can be sort of 30 centimeters thick. And then just turns the whole ecology of the area into one damp trad bed that natives can't germinate through. It can be sprayed out if there's not natives around using glyphosate at 50-1. But again, that does require a couple of sprays, but I've had quite good results at really reducing the population down of the trad. And I find that I still have to finally hand weed the species to get rid of it. And the key with trad is to be, when you're in the end phase, is to be quite surgical. There can be small little nodes that break off from the trad that will in fact start the whole population again if you miss them. One technique for removing trad, which I find is really effective if I find I can't spray, is to scrape all the leaf litter and the trad back so it becomes bare earth. And I go to town on it, make it very tidy. I don't leave leaves and sticks around. I do that over a large area and I mound up all the leaf litter, and then maybe I'll dump that in a spot of trad that I'm not going to weed, and then that way trad is just lying on top of trad and that doesn't spread. Or I take it off site. Some people put black plastic over it as well. That tends to get holes in it eventually, but that can also be effective. Next we have a native lookalike. Morning, Pooch. This one's Commelina. Oh, yes, hello. Okay, this one's mistaken for trad. The difference is that Commelina has a blue flower and the trad has a white flower. We can see them growing side by side here. Commelina on the left and trad on the right. Notice how it's a narrower, drawn-out leaf compared to trad, which has a more broad, robust leaf. The feeling of the two plants is trad is a fair bit fleshier than Commelina, which has a comparatively wiry feel to it. Another thing to note is that trad is often more bunched up with its leaves. See, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves within, let's say, an inch, whereas the Commelina is a bit more spread out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's it's more spread out there. One of our native lookalikes. This is sickle fern, Palea falcata. Now this is mistaken for fishbone fern, and this one will grow near creeks but also can inhabit dry areas, especially in richer soils. It doesn't have its spores or its sori produced this time of the year, but they actually look a fair bit different to the fishbone fern in that on the native they will make this brown margin around the whole of this little leaflet, or pinnae it's called. It almost looks like someone gets a brown texture marker and draws a line around the outside. And if we compare that back with the fishbone fern I have in my pocket, see there are the dots all around the margin. There's not a continuous band, but little dots.